Staying with the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, let's bring in SABC News Reporter Canny Maphanga, who is at the Commission for us. A very good afternoon to you, Canny. Very interesting things that have come out of the Commission on the third day. Tell us more.
Indeed, good afternoon to you, Nombu, and to the viewers at home. A lot to unpack from the third day of Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi's testimony, as he went into great deal about the alleged associates of the now suspended Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, that is Brown Mkhwanazi, and then of course went into detail about the alleged political interference in the work of the criminal justice system, poking at ministers, former ministers, and of course also entering into the judiciary as far as magistrates are concerned. I think where we can start is where Brown Mkhwanazi is, where he made the allegation that this is a person, or rather he painted a picture that this is a person that allegedly enjoys influence, connectivity, deep connectivity and proximity within SABC. We see that he had taken the messages that they have gotten from Vusumuzi Kat Matlala, who is one of the individuals that Mkhwanazi has identified as an alleged drug cartel member, has taken those WhatsApps from the phone that were retrieved during the investigation of the PKTT, that is the Political Killings Task Team, and has uncovered messages that show the kind of deep connections that this Brown Mkhwanazi enjoys within the South African police services. There's a message even that Brown Mkhwanazi had sent to Vusumuzi Kat Matlala to inform him that the task team that had gone to his home to conduct a search, or ask some questions rather, that they were going to be disbanded. This means that this ordinary person who was not a member of the South African police services knew the information about the disbandment of the PKTT before Mkhwanazi himself had learned of that particular information, meaning that this is someone who has quite close proximity to SABC, has access to confidential internal documents of SABC, and is believed to be an alleged close associate of the police minister, or suspended police minister Senzo Mchunu, but in the same breath enjoys close links with these alleged drug cartel members. And that all links to this pattern that he deliberately is intentionally trying to show the Commission, that is focused towards one goal, which is ensuring that this investigation that spilled over into Gauteng, into those drug cartel operations, does not thrive. But to elaborate further, I am joined by political analyst Mkhwanazi, who has been following this particular portion quite extensively, and it's quite interesting to see how Brown Mkhwanazi really enjoyed, unprecedented access. Well, that's what it appears like from the evidence brought by Mkhwanazi to the police minister, the now suspended police minister, and then of course in the same breath to very dodgy individuals that have been linked to this drug cartel that this team is working quite hard and efficiently to eliminate from the Gauteng province.
No, absolutely, and good afternoon, Kenny, to you and your viewers. Brown Mkhwanazi seems to really have good access to the Minister of Police, Senzo Mchunu. I don't know if he's suspended. I don't know if a minister can be suspended, but that's a story for another day. Yeah. And it does seem that Mkhwanazi has really downloaded quite efficiently some of the communication between him and Vusumuzi Kat Matlala, because he even talks about a message that says, "Today is D-Day." Yes. You don't have, stand back, don't worry, and that is the reference to the 31 December 2024 letter that would have been written to disestablish the Political Killings Task Team. Of course, as Mkhwanazi puts it, he says it was a missed target, because actually the real team that they ought to have disestablished is the GCI Ops, yes. Which is the Gauteng specific team on crime intelligence, particularly on organized crime and drug syndicate cartels. And he had just seconded members from KwaZulu-Natal to that team to help with the multidisciplinary kind of approach of how that team operates. So it's interesting, but also it tells you that politicians clearly have runners, and this is something that we have always suspected. And of course, Brown Mkhwanazi, Minister Senzo Mchunu will have to come before the Commission and give their side of the story.
Of course, the Taken target didn't stop there. He continued to join the dots, stating that this crime intelligence unit was specifically focused on these drug cartels operating in the Gauteng province. He then zooms into a case that I think all South Africans were wondering about, which is the General Khumalo case, where he appeared in court over the appointment of an individual into intelligence. And many questions arose about this, whether this was a criminal matter or whether this was a witch hunt. We're starting to get more of an explanation from Mkhwanazi, who basically paints the picture that the general was targeted to eliminate this investigation against the drug cartels. He even ropes in the magistrate that is presiding over this matter, stating that the magistrate set a bail condition which makes it impossible for those that are appearing in that courtroom to continue to investigate the operation that they had set out to investigate, which is the drug cartels that have been allegedly linked to Matlala and Molefe. Again, roping in the judiciary as well as other key role players, state institutions and the criminal justice system, and stopping this common goal which he keeps reiterating, which is to stop the investigation that has spilled over into Gauteng about these drug cartel operations.
No, without a doubt, him calling it a bizarre bail condition that was enforced, and then of course trying to demonstrate that when the CFO of the Crime Intelligence Unit appeared before a different magistrate, the bail conditions were quite different, to say that it's for the National Commissioner to impose whether or not people can be restricted to go to their places of work because of the investigations that are going on. But I do think that the Commission will probably be a little bit cautious not to litigate a matter that is before the courts of law. And whilst Mkhwanazi is leading the evidence on this matter, I do think that the commissioners will be a little sensitive to the fact that it is before the courts of law. It may well not be treated as sub judice, but you definitely don't want to create parallel court processes where the commission has to pronounce in a manner that the magistrates may not do so. But of course, I mean, if there's something amiss in how the magistrate handled the matter, then it must be taken to the correct channels.
And then lastly, we were anticipating hearing about the political interference, which we thought would be, I guess, the biggest portion of Mkhwanazi's evidence. Quite surprising to see it limited to the former Minister of Police, Beyicele, and the now current Minister of Police that is on a leave of absence / suspension, Senzo Mchunu as well. We expected probably more names. I guess that's linked to the historical reference that he made, that he said that he started to see trends that he had seen in the past that we thought as a constitutional democracy we had climbed over, because we already saw the Mkhwanazi inquiry and the Zondo Commission ventilate these issues. But he's saying that he saw that this past was rearing its ugly head through these instances that he saw with Cele and Mchunu, and that triggered him to announce that statement that he made in the briefing in July earlier this year.
No, absolutely. I mean, of course, the name of Nathi Mthethwa, then Minister of Police in 2011-2012, coming up. Of course, Minister Beyicele, also his name coming up, former Minister of Police, current Minister of Police, Senzo Mchunu, his name coming up. And I think what's interesting, though, is you need to look at the level at which Mkhwanazi operates. I mean, he would have been acting National Commissioner at the time, so the political interference that he would have probably experienced comes from the executive itself. And whether or not a minister acts on the behest of the president, that is still another question that needs to really be interrogated, and whether or not the president is briefed when a minister is trying to exert pressure on a national commissioner, on a provincial commissioner. Of course, it may well be that the rank and file of police experience different forms of political interference, but it would be for them to come up and then indicate to the commission what kind of political pressures that they deal with. But I mean, the example made of Minister Mchunu taking an interest in the investigation, for example, of a particular killing of a would have been ANC member, now gone to an opposition bench, and of course campaigning, and of course again Mkhwanazi calling it a missed target because it actually was the brother of the councillor candidate who was actually charged and so on. But I mean, I think we do know that politicians tend to interfere, and there's been a clear, debate and discussion with the professionalization of the public service, to say, are we looking at professionalization, or are we looking at rooting out political interference in the bureaucracy? And you hear former DGs and former HODs speak out, and you realize that there is an overextension of politics into the bureaucracy, and I think that's what he's talking about. Of course, he will probably not, mention every person who may have sought to interfere in the business of the police. But the example is clear. It happens at the highest level in cabinet. You can imagine what happens in provincial cabinets and in municipal level kind of districts.
Certainly, Connor. We have seen the Lieutenant General go into quite detail to explain how this interference occurs within the criminal justice system, and not only hinders the investigation of such an operation such as the one we've seen in Gauteng, which intends to stop the operation of these alleged drug cartels, but of course spans across different institutions within the criminal justice system, and we've seen how deep the network can get. We expect after the lunch adjournment he'll continue to expand on several other topics that deal with this issue of interference in the criminal justice system. Over to you in studio.
All right, thanks very much. My colleague there, Canny Maphanga.